So good morning, everyone. I'm Liz Drake, and I'm the Director of Corporate Technology Talent Acquisition for Thomson Reuters. I've been with Thomson Reuters for about 7 years, but recruiting technical talent for about 16. I've had the opportunity to build out teams for our data innovation labs and our Center for Cognitive Computing. I'm currently building out our cloud team as well as hiring talent in big data. I hire talent all across the board, from new college graduates to executives. And I absolutely love what I do. It's very, very rewarding for me to bring in the right talent so that Thomson Reuters can deliver on its roadmap and build products that satisfy their customers. It's also very rewarding to extend offers to candidates for a position that jumpstarts their career or is the right next step for their career path. Besides my day job, I get to come out into the community and work on events like this where I can share my perspective and offer some guidance to students who are preparing to transition into the workforce. This is something I'm happy to get up early on the Saturday morning to do, so thank you for letting me spend 40 minutes with you. I know that your time is very valuable as busy students, so I'll try to make this well worth your while. So interviewing, there's no doubt that interviews can be one of the most stressful situations a person can be in. It's right up there with public speaking. But research shows that on an average, you'll have 7 career changes in your lifetime and will change jobs every 2 to 3 years. So you can expect to be engaged in a job search with some regularity throughout your career. Being comfortable interviewing is a worthy goal. What I'd like to do in the next 40 minutes is suggest some things to help you reduce some of that stress and provide some practical tips on preparing for your interviews so that you can put yourself in a strong position to get the job that you want. So our agenda. First, I think it's important to put things into perspective so that you can establish a balanced mindset and approach to interviewing. Second, you have 2 basic goals in an interview, and so we'll walk through those. Third, and you'll hear me mention this word a lot, the art of the interview can be summarized in a single word, and that is preparation. Fourth, we'll walk through some of my favorite interview questions and some sample questions you may want to ask during your interview. I'll also cover some interviewing logistics. And finally, if we have time, because I know we have to run over to the gym for the next event, I'll open it up for questions. So I'd like to dispel a common misperception about the dynamic between a candidate and an interviewer. I think a lot of stress for candidates comes from the notion that interviews are a one-sided inquisition where you, the candidate, are singularly being judged by me with a barrage of questions against some vague criteria. That perspective naturally produces a lot of anxiety. What I'd like you to consider when you walk into the interview room is that you actually share the same goal that I do, and that's to answer a single question. Do we have a match? As a candidate, your goal is to find the right job. And as a recruiter, my goal is to find the right person for the job. Let's look at your goal first. What is the right job for you? My assumption is that you've worked through this exercise before we meet in an interview, because you need to know what you're looking for before you go out into the marketplace, right? As a new college grad with somewhat limited experience in your chosen field, you may hold the position that you'll take anything, but I really encourage you to be thoughtful about this. As someone in the STEM field, you will have options. It's important for you to make a list of things that are important to you when you go out into the market to look for it. Some questions to help you narrow down what you're looking for are, what do you want to do for work? What do you want to work on? Are there technologies you've worked with that you'd like to expand your skills in? Do you have a knack for debugging code and want to continue to do that? Do you like to spend most of your time working independently, or do you prefer to work within a team? Another question, what kind of environment do you thrive in? This is something that is rarely considered, particularly with students ready to go into the workforce, but for many people who are advanced in their career. But it's an important thing to consider. Do you like a dynamic environment, or are you comfortable with something more predictable? Is a big corporation something that would suit you better than a small startup? Each of these options has a different culture, offers different growth opportunities, and a different career path for you. So answering these questions will guide your overall job search and help you prepare for your interviews, both in the research that you do prior to your interview and in the questions you'll ask me during our interview. So, I'm the recruiter, you're looking for the right job, and I'm looking for the right candidate to do the job. And I can guarantee you that I have spent a considerable amount of time preparing my job announcement before you even see it. I've sat down with the hiring manager and we've talked in great detail about the role, the key responsibilities, and the qualifications we'll be looking for in our targeted candidate profile. These are the key competencies, the skills, and the experience someone will need to have to be successful in that role. All of this information is detailed in the job description, and my review of resumes and the questions that are asked in interviews will tie back to the responsibilities and the qualifications I've listed in the job description. So, how do we find out if we've got a match? It's really pretty simple. We've got a series of interviews together where we exchange information through discussions until one or both of us decide that it's not a match. And at that point, we go our separate ways. If we complete our interviews and both of us agree that it's a match, I have a new employee and you have a new job, and it's time to celebrate. So let's move on and talk about the two goals that you have in your interview. So the first goal is to provide information to me that helps me understand your fit with the position, the team, and Thomson Reuters. So here we are, we're in front of each other. You've got your wish list of the kind of work you want to do and the kind of environment you want to work in, and you've decided that based on your research so far, that my position seems like a match, and you've submitted your application. And I've, on the other side, reviewed your resume and any other information that you provided me in the application and see enough of a match to schedule an interview so that we can explore this further. So being prepared and understanding how you can connect the dots between what I'm looking for and the experience and skills that you present is key. The second piece of this is gathering information that helps you determine if my job, the team, and Thomson Reuters is the right fit for you. So let's spend some time reviewing how you're going to prepare for your interview, which is essentially talking about and expanding on what you've provided on your resume. So remember, the art of the interview is all about preparation. So the job description, of course, gives you the perfect framework to align your background with my position. You have an overview of the job responsibilities and a detailed list of all the things I'm looking for. I've even included a link on Thomson Reuters so that you can go to our website and review all the relevant information about us that's important to you in your job search. The first thing to do is to connect the dots between your background and the list of responsibilities and qualifications I'm looking for. So that starts with taking an inventory of all the relevant experience, knowledge, and skills you acquired so far. So as a recruiter who is interested in hiring new college graduates, I know that you're in the very early stages of your career. So your experience will reflect that. It's important that you don't overrepresent or underrepresent your experience. If you don't include relevant information in your resume and talk to me about that in the interview, you may miss out on an opportunity. I just spoke with a young man in the downstairs for the resume reviewing section, and he came with a very Spartan resume. But as I was talking with him, he had amazing examples of technology that he had created on his own. His approach to every position that he had, every job that he had, was focused on identifying efficiencies, saving time, customer satisfaction, and none of that was listed on the resume. None of it. And so he has a lot of work to do in going back and doing some revisions, because if he presents that resume, the original resume, I would pass him by. I wouldn't have any idea that he had done all of these things with the mindset that he had. So make sure you do a good inventory of all the relevant things that you've done. Secondly, don't or overrepresent your experience. One of the things that I've noticed, and this is particular to technologists, is they will list or they'll have 3 or 4 inches under technical skills on their resume. And it would be an amazing thing if they had intermediate to advanced skills in all of those areas, right? But chances are they don't. So when we sit down and have an interview, everything that's represented on the resume is fair game for me to dig in to get some more information about how is it relevant, how is that skill relevant to what I'm looking for. And if you've listed things that you don't really have any skills in, we have a little bit of a trust issue, and I'm kind of wondering, what else is not exactly correct on your resume. So understand what your skills are, do an inventory, know thyself before you come into an interview. So the knowledge and experience you've acquired in your area of study that are relevant to the basic qualifications, that's one of the 2 primary areas that we'll focus on. So most of your experience as a student comes from your academic experience. So include relevant class projects that you've worked on. You may have gained some experience as a research assistant or a teacher's assistant or a peer tutor, or you may have had an internship. You may also have done some independent work like building an application on your own or competing in hackathons. All of this is important for you to highlight to me during our interview. How you talk about it is really important. So what I typically ask candidates, and it's good to put it in a framework, everything that you've done. What was your biggest contribution while you were there? And what did you learn? So if you had an internship, if you had a research assistant opportunity, if you participated in a hackathon, what was your biggest contribution, and what did you learn? So second, and almost more important, is the knowledge and experience you've acquired developing characteristics of a valuable team member. So communication. Have you had experience leading meetings or giving presentations or developing reports? Teamwork. Are you a good collaborator? Are you good at resolving conflicts? Are you mindful of how your work fits into the goals of your team? Leadership. Have you gained experience as a mentor or a coach or a tutor? Have you led activities or projects? And last, a work ethic. Do you take ownership of your work and responsibility for your actions? Do you show up on time? Do you keep your word? Can you be trusted? So there's a reason why communication is at the very top of this list, because all of the knowledge inside of your head is only as valuable as your effectiveness in communicating that knowledge to your audience, and your audience will change. So being able to adapt your communication style to different audiences is really essential. So building skills in these 4 areas is really key and will support your success regardless of your career path throughout your career. So another important part of your preparation for an interview is be prepared to provide examples of your work and how you made things better. So no matter what organization you're interviewing with, the size of the organization, what product or service they sell. They all want to satisfy their current customers, attract new ones, and create efficiencies to lower the cost of doing business. Every person they hire will have a part to play in each of these. So if you can show in your interview that you have this same mindset and can provide examples of how you made a difference, you will distinguish yourself from other candidates. So have you created efficiencies that have saved money or time? Have you done things to increase your customer satisfaction? How has your work as an individual contributed to the productivity of your team? And how have you shown good leadership to drive to results or bring out the best in your team? If you're able to clearly articulate how your background aligns with my requirements, you are well on your way to moving to the next round of interviews, which is your goal in this interview. But that's only one half of the picture, so it's not all about me. Let's look a little bit at goal 2. The other side of the equation, evaluating whether or not my job is the right one for you. Now, this is important. You've already done your homework and narrowed down the kind of work you'd like to do and the kind of environment you'd like to work in. And I'm assuming that because you submitted your application for my position, that you've done some research up front to determine my position in Thomson Reuters as a potential fit. And you can get some of this information, again, from reviewing the job description or a website or going on to Glassdoor, so you'll need to explore these further during your interview. And as important as the work that you do is the context of where you do it. When you spend 40 hours a week in a job, you want to be in an environment that you enjoy. Do you like an environment where you're in a team of 10 doing a lot of different things, or where you're in a team of 100 and your role is more specific? Are you okay having a manager that's located halfway across the world that you'll never meet in person? Because this happens. Do you mind working shift hours or weekends, or do you want to work a more predictable 9-to-5 weekday schedule? Are you okay with a 90-minute commute each way, or do you want to ride your bike to work? Is it important that a company is profitable and also a good steward of the environment or involved in the community? These are all questions and things that you need to think about in preparation for your interview. Now let's look at some of my favorite interview questions. And these are questions that I ask. And these are questions that I ask everyone that I interview. So the first one is my favorite because you can get a lot of information out of this single question. So what are the motivators that have directed your career choices so far, and how does my position fit in with that? So what I'm looking for is a thoughtful overview of how and why you've made the decisions you've made, including your academic program. What drives you? That's what I'm looking for. Also, I'm looking for how clear you are on what makes sense for you, your next move coming out of college, and how my position fits in with that. I want to see you connect the dots, and this single question does that. If I just asked this question, I could make a pretty good decision on a candidate and whether or not to move forward. I've literally had people during a phone interview say, "Which job is this again?" So being prepared is really important. I've also heard people pull up the job description and start reading from it. What was missing in this picture is preparation, right? Why do you want to work at Thomson Reuters? Or why do you want to work at X? Whatever company you're interviewing for, please do some basic research on the company. What product or service are they in the business of? Where are their headquarters? Go to the latest news releases so that you're up on what's happening currently with that organization. So this single question will tell me how prepared you are for the interview and how interested you are in the opportunity. It also gives me some insight into your work ethic. If you're not taking time to do some basic research for a job with my company, then I'm really uncertain you take the job seriously. So this is one of those key things, and I'll mention these along the way, where you can very easily differentiate yourself from your competition. I am astonished at how many people I interview who cannot answer this question, and it's not just new college grads, it's right up to executives. I've heard people pull up the Thomson Reuters website and start reading from it verbatim. So, big tip here, do your research. It's well worth it, and it will raise you above other people in the candidate pool. So, we've talked about this third one, what do you need in your work environment to support your best work? So, a couple things here that I'm looking for. This gives me an indication of your self-awareness, and that you're approaching this conversation with me in a balanced way, that you're evaluating the match with me. It also helps me understand if our environment will support your best work. If I'm recruiting a network engineer and there's an on-call pager rotation every 3 weeks, 24 hours for a week, and you're you're still in the classroom, or you're taking night classes, these are things that we need to discover in this initial discussion. It needs to align with your lifestyle and other priorities in your life. So understanding, what type of environment you want to work in, it's important information for us to share in an interview. So the next one, what are your top 3 strengths? So easy. Why? Because these should tie back to the responsibilities of the role and the qualifications I've listed in the job description. If you are prepared, you'll ace this question, right? The last one. So this is a sticky one, but I'll tell you why I always include this out of the gate in my interviews. What are you targeting for compensation? Again, preparation. You need to know your value in the marketplace, and there are lots of sites where you can get this information. Do your research. So compensation is one of those make or break things we want to get out of the way up front to preserve each other's time. If I interview somebody and I neglect to identify whether or not we're in the ballpark for compensation, and this person has completed their final round interviews, and my hiring manager is super excited, Liz, go ahead and make that offer, and I discover we're $50,000 off on what we're willing to pay and what they want, I'm not going to feel very good going back to my hiring manager, and they're not going to be very happy with me. So make sure that you do your research. I don't need an exact figure, but if you can give me a $5,000, $10,000 range so I know if we're in the ballpark, that's sufficient. I have to mention something here also. Please don't quote something from an interview tips guide to the effect of, it's not just about the money, it's really about the opportunity. We can discuss this at a more appropriate time in the interview process. Don't do that, because if I can't get a range from you, I'm not going to move you forward, because as I mentioned, it's important that we discuss these things up front. And a $10,000 range is sufficient. You don't have to, put dollars and cents to it. So there are some really easy ways to stand out in a candidate pool, and asking thoughtful questions during an interview is one of them. There is nothing more disappointing for me than while I'm having an interview with a candidate to, in the middle, usually I start the interview, before I go into my questions, do you have any questions out of the gate? That's the first opportunity for you to show me that you're engaged and say, oh yeah, whatever question you may have of these. And then I'll break during the middle of the interview and ask again for questions, and then in conclusion we'll hit on that. But there's nothing more disappointing for me to hear than a candidate who says some version of no. So these are some questions that I get. I wish I got them more often than I do, but they are all fair game. And how these questions are answered is a way for you to evaluate if this is the right opportunity for you. So, what is the day in the life of a software engineer? So this will give you a lot of information about what you can expect to be doing on a day-to-day basis, 40 hours a week, or if it's part-time, 20 hours a week. But this is a really important question for you to ask. What are some of your current challenges? Now, this question will get you to some insight into what you'll be stepping in. So maybe there are problems or issues that you don't necessarily want to be involved in. Maybe there are challenges that this group has that you're excited about because you've got experience solving similar problems. This is another really good question. And what are the development opportunities for someone in the position? Don't leave an interview without asking that. It's really key. So this is where you determine if there's growth in areas you're interested in going into. This is your future, so please ask this question. The team environment. Tell me about the culture at Thomson Reuters. So every company has a culture, and if your interviewer can't describe it, that's a red flag for you. I get this question probably 7 of every 10 interviews, and I love it, and I love talking about Thomson Reuters culture, and so the culture of your work environment is really important for you to understand that so that you know if it's something that it fits and aligns with your values. What kind of things do you value in a team member? Now, this will give you more insight into what they're looking for and if this fits you. If you make it to the next round of interviews and they tell you, well, we really need somebody who can cover the core hours, we really need somebody who has a good basic understanding of Java, we're doing a couple of releases in a couple of weeks so that they can jump in and help us right away. If you've got experience in that area, that's something that you'll touch on in your next round of interviews because you've already been given the lead into something that they're looking for. And if you can connect that dot, you're improving your chances of getting that job if you want it. So the company, tell me about your experience working at Thomson Reuters. The answer to this question could be a version of your future, so listen closely. This is a really important question. Don't leave an interview without asking this question. So these are just some interview day logistics. And I think, a lot of this is driven by common sense, but sometimes it's worth mentioning. So it's interview day, what do you wear? So we don't want to impose on your personal style or anything like that. But the general rule of thumb is to keep it moderate and professional. The point is not to wear anything that distracts from the conversation. And that's really the only piece of guidance I have around that. A couple weeks ago, I had an individual come in for second round interviews, and he was wearing this beautiful linen suit and this beautiful, beautiful handmade tie. And, that is A-okay. But in conversation with him, it kept getting distracted towards his tie because he actually was creating ties. That was his side business. So he was almost selling his ties at the interview. So that's just an example of, you need to focus on what your intention is in that interview and focus how you present yourself in that manner. What to bring. So just bring something to take notes. If there's something that is mentioned during the interview that you want to follow up with later, in particular somebody's email address, because you're going to send a thank you, you need to have something to commit that to. If it's your phone, that's fine. And when to arrive, 10 minutes early, never ever late. If you're running late, like Thomson Reuters is a very large campus. We've got 6,700 people out there. The parking lot can be murderous for visitors. If you feel like you're going to be a little bit late, you can give me a call or send me a text or an email saying that you are going to be late. But if if I'm sitting in a room, or if I have an interview team sitting in a room, their time is valuable and you're not there yet, it's really hard to get over that. It's really hard to get over that. I've seen people running across, because my office is overlooking the visitor parking lot, and so I've seen people running across the parking lot, putting on their ties and their dress shoes and things like that. So it's so important to be timely. And then one thing that I didn't mention here is turn off your cell phone. That can be pretty distracting, so make sure that you do that. So your mindset, so be relaxed and be yourself. Remember, we're having a conversation to see if we've got a match. I want to share information with you. I want you to ask me questions so that I can share information. It's hard to be kind of calm because, there is a lot at stake. And I've had candidates that have been so nervous, the shade of their face has turned bright red, and profuse sweating, and stuttering voice. And in those situations, I usually take them for a walk around the campus, just give them a tour to kind of get their minds off of the intensity of that discussion. And then by that time we get back into the room and they're a little bit more relaxed. But even if you're nervous, it's okay. We'll get through that together. So this is a professional discussion, and stay focused and remain professional throughout the interview. So make sure you're listening to the questions so that you have an appropriate answer, and keep it succinct. And again, listening carefully is really important. So interview follow-up, another easy way for you to distinguish yourself from the others in the candidate pool. Send a thank you to the people who interviewed you. Send a thank you to the person who arranged your meeting. I have a senior vice president that I worked with when I was building out the data innovation labs in Boston. She's very well known, and even for interns or anybody that we hired for her team, she would follow up immediately with me to see if they sent a thank you to me. And if they didn't go any further. So it's really worth taking the time to do that. The follow-up piece. I know it's very hard to wait patiently while you're seeing if you're going to move forward or getting some feedback from your interview. I usually promise candidates that I'll follow up within 48 to 72 hours. I really, really try hard to stick to that, and it's not often that I don't. But I always assume positive intent. Most times recruiters have probably 25 to 50 positions that they're working on, and so they have candidate pools that they're working with for each of those positions. So as far as timeliness of your follow-up to see what the status is it's a-okay. Wait 10 days, 7 days if you're antsy, that's okay, and send an email. And you can just say, just following up on the interviews, I know that I was expecting to hear word back, understand you're probably busy, but still very interested in the opportunity. That's fair game. How am I doing on time? 4 minutes. Who's going to be the brave one and give me a question? Okay. That's a good question. So the question was, what does compensation include? Is that benefits or just salary? When we speak about compensation, that's usually, the money you need to make. So $68,000 a year, $45,000 a year. So it's specifically to the money aspect. Good question. Say that again? Benefits. So typically what happens is, you can ask about benefits pretty much any time, but it's more normal to address that as you're concluding your interviews when you're when an offer is going to be made. But that's just how it kind of goes as a cycle. But it's okay for you to ask, can you tell me a little bit about your benefits? That's perfectly acceptable. The older generation? Well, here's probably, so it's okay for you to ask the question, and my answer would be, Thomson Reuters' philosophy around benefits is to go dead center down the middle, so for companies of our size and our business. So we have a good benefits package. It's not better than most, and it's not worse than most. You know what I mean? I can send that say something like that. We've got 401k, we've got health care, et cetera, et cetera. However, if you ask for them to send you the document, benefits information, that is where you'd probably get some pushback because that's competitive information. Do we have time? Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have any more time. We've got to go over to the gym. But after the gym and we come back here, I'll be in the atrium, right? And I'm able to answer any questions that you have, so come and visit. So good morning.